Captain Jake Morrison sat in his chair on the bridge of the Earthship Defiance. His crew had been traveling through space for 3 months, looking at new star systems and making maps. They were far from home, but that was their job. Humanity had only learned how to travel faster than light a few years ago, and now they wanted to see what was out there. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez looked up from her station. Her screen was showing something strange. "Captain, I'm seeing ships. A lot of them. They just appeared out of nowhere." Jake stood up and walked over to her station. "How many ships?" 12, sir. They're much bigger than anything we've ever seen before." Amy's voice was shaking a little bit. She had been on survey missions before, but never anything like this. Commander Lisa Hayes came to stand next to Jake. She had red hair and green eyes that were now staring at the tactical screen. "They're not sending any signals. I've tried calling them, but they won't answer." Jake thought about what to do. The Defiance was made for exploring, not fighting. If these new ships wanted to hurt them, they would have to run. Keep trying to talk to them. Use every language we know. Send them math problems. Show them we're friendly. What Jake didn't know was that the ships belonged to the Zalkran hegemony. The Zalkran were an old race that had been traveling through space for thousands of years. They were strong and they were mean. They had taken over 17 star systems and made slaves out of dozens of different species. They thought humans were just another weak race that would bow down to them. On the biggest Zalkran ship, Commander Vexthor looked at the human vessel. He had scales like a lizard and claws on his hands. The translator in his head turned the human messages into something he could understand. He thought it was funny that these humans were trying to be friendly. Vexthor opened a communication channel. His voice came through rough and scary. "Attention, human ship. You are in Zalkran territory. Your species must leave this area and go back to your home. You will give us your technology and your resources. If you don't surrender in 1 hour, we will destroy your ship and take over your planet." Everyone on the Defiance bridge went quiet. Jake felt sick to his stomach. He had hoped that meeting aliens would be a good thing. Instead, they had found something dangerous, an empire that saw them as weak and wanted to conquer them. "Sir, what do we do?" Amy asked. Jake looked at Lisa, then at all his crew. They were scared, but they trusted him. He thought about Earth, about the billions of people who didn't know that aliens existed and that those aliens wanted to hurt them. "Send a message to Earth Command. Make it priority 1. Tell them we found hostile aliens who just threatened us. Then set a course for home as fast as we can go. We need to warn everyone." Lisa moved to follow his orders, but before she could, the Zalkran ship started shooting. Energy beams flew through space and hit the Defiance shields hard. The whole ship shook and crew members fell down. "Shields are at 60%, Amy shouted over the alarm sounds. "They're trying to stop our engines." "Put all power to engines," Jake ordered as he held onto his chair. Another blast hit them. "Get us out of here now." The Defiance turned and ran. The engines worked harder than they were supposed to. Behind them, the Zalkran ships followed, but they didn't try very hard to catch them. Vexthor watched the human ship escape, and he was happy about it. Let them run, he thought. Let them tell their people about Zalkran power. Soon the humans would learn what happens when you say no to the hegemony, and another species would become slaves. But Vexthor made a big mistake. He judged humans by comparing them to other species the Zalkran had conquered. Those other species were peaceful traders or worlds that couldn't work together. They would rather give up than fight. He had no way of knowing that humans had spent 10,000 years fighting wars. Every page of human history was written in blood. Humans had almost destroyed themselves many times but always came back stronger. As the Defiance headed toward Earth with its warning, Vexthor didn't know that he had just made the worst mistake in Zalkran history. He had just started a war with the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The trip back to Earth took 2 weeks. Jake spent that time writing reports and thinking about what would happen next. His crew was quiet and worried. They all knew that their lives had just changed forever. Humanity wasn't alone anymore, and their new neighbors wanted to conquer them. When they finally reached Earth, military ships came to escort them in. Jake was taken straight to a meeting with Earth's leaders. In a big room in Geneva, people from every nation gathered to hear what he had to say. Jake stood in front of them and played the recording of Vexthor's threat. He watched their faces change from curious to shocked to angry. When the recording ended, everyone started talking at once. President Daniel Cross stood up. He was an older man with gray hair. "Captain Morrison, do you think they'll really attack us?" Jake nodded. Yes, sir. They think we're weak. They think we'll just give up. And from what I could tell, they have a lot more ships than we do. Then we need to prepare, said General Victor Kane. He was a big man with scars on his face from old battles. We need to build weapons. We need to get ready to defend ourselves. Some leaders argued that they should try to talk to the Zalkren. Others said they should hide and hope the aliens forgot about them. But Jake knew the truth. The Zalkren wouldn't forget and they wouldn't negotiate. They only understood strength. In the end, Earth's leaders made a choice. They would not surrender. They would not become slaves. They would fight even if it meant they might lose everything, because some things were worth dying for, and freedom was at the top of that list. As Jake left the meeting, he looked up at the sky. Somewhere out there, the Zalkren were coming. They thought they were about to conquer another primitive world. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The leaders of Earth met again just hours after hearing Jake's report. The room was tense and everyone looked worried. They had just learned that aliens existed and those aliens wanted to make them slaves. Now they had to decide what to do about it. President Daniel Cross stood at the front of the room. We know what the Zalkren want. The question is, how do we respond? Do we try to talk to them or do we prepare to fight? Prime Minister Elizabeth Porter from the United Kingdom stood up. She looked serious. How can we fight them? They have better technology than us. They have more ships. Maybe we should at least try to negotiate. The room filled with arguing voices. Some people wanted to try talking. Others said that giving up would be the end of human freedom. The debate went on for hours and no one could agree. Finally, General Victor Kane spoke up. His voice was loud and rough. Listen to me. I've looked at the data from the Defiance. Yes, their ships are strong, but they're not impossible to beat. Their weapons use energy we can block. They were careful when they chased Captain Morrison, which means they're not used to fighting enemies who fight back. Most important, they gave us time to surrender instead of just destroying the ship. That tells me they expect threats to work. He paused and looked around the room. We have a choice. We can bow to these aliens and hope they're kind masters, or we can show them that humans don't kneel to anyone. Not ever. President Cross leaned forward. General, are you really saying we should go to war with an empire that controls multiple star systems? We barely have a dozen ships. I'm saying we should defend ourselves, Victor replied. If we don't fight, we lose everything that matters. Our freedom. Our right to choose our own future. Yes, it's dangerous. Yes, we might lose. But I would rather die fighting for Earth than live as a slave on my own world. The leaders voted at sunrise. It wasn't everyone, but most agreed. Earth would not surrender. They would prepare for war. Over the next weeks, Earth changed completely. Every factory that could build ships started working day and night. Scientists who used to study peaceful things now worked on weapons. Humanity had spent thousands of years getting good at war, and now they turned all that knowledge toward one goal: survival. At the Lunar Defense Complex, Admiral Patricia Cole watched as the first warships took shape. She was a veteran who had spent her whole career in space. Now she had to prepare for a battle unlike anything humans had ever faced. Show me the new design, Patricia said to her chief engineer, Sophie Chen. Sophie was brilliant and had left her civilian job to help build military ships. Sophie pulled up a hologram of a sleek, dangerous-looking ship. We call it the Vindicator class. We took out everything we didn't need and filled it with weapons. Railguns here and here. She pointed to different parts of the ship. Nuclear missiles in these bays. And we made a new laser system that should cut through their shields if we focus fire. How many can we build? Patricia asked. If every shipyard works full-time, maybe 30 in 3 months, 60 in 6 months. Patricia nodded slowly. It wasn't enough if the Zalkren had hundreds of ships. But it was a start. What about crews? Every military pilot wants to help. We're also getting volunteers from regular people, scientists, engineers, even commercial pilots. Everyone wants to fight. Sophie looked grim. They know what will happen if we lose. While the military built ships, scientists tried to understand the enemy. Dr. Martin Gray was a scientist who had spent his life thinking about alien life. Now he actually had aliens to study. The Zalkren look like reptiles, Martin explained to President Cross and the military leaders. Based on their ships and how they act, we think they're cold-blooded predators. That means they think like hunters. Patient, smart, and confident, they're the strongest. What's their weakness? Victor Kane asked directly. Martin hesitated. They've probably never faced real resistance. Animals that hunt alone at the top of the food chain often don't know what to do when prey fights back. They'll expect us to act like they're other victims, give up or get crushed quickly. If we can survive their first attack and prove we're dangerous, they might think twice. Or they might get more determined to destroy us, Patricia pointed out. That's the risk, Martin admitted. But predators respect strength. If we want any chance at peace later, we need to make them respect us first. Jake Morrison was promoted to Commodore and given command of the 1st Defensive Fleet. He knew that many of the people he would lead into battle wouldn't come home. That knowledge weighed on him like a stone. "Do you think we can win?" Lisa Hayes asked him one night. She had been promoted to captain and would command one of the new destroyers. Jake looked at a map of space showing how big the galaxy was and how small Earth seemed. "I think we can make them sorry they attacked us. And sometimes that's enough." 3 months after the Zulkran gave their threat, Earth's defenses were ready. 32 warships orbited the planet with trained crews and loaded weapons. Defense platforms surrounded the moon and Earth's space stations. Every major city had deep shelters underground and plans to evacuate people. They didn't have to wait long. Sensors picked up the Zulkran fleet approaching. They were coming and they brought a lot of ships. Everyone on Earth held their breath. Some people prayed. Some people cried. Some people just stared at the sky and wondered if they would see tomorrow. Children were rushed into shelters. Soldiers said goodbye to their families. Scientists checked their calculations one last time. In orbit, Patricia Cole sat in her command chair and watched the tactical display light up with hostile contacts. She felt the weight of 3 billion lives depending on her decisions. The odds were bad, but humans had won against bad odds before. "All ships, this is Admiral Cole," she broadcast to the fleet. "Battle stations. Do not fire until I give the order." She switched to a private channel to Jake. "Are your people ready?" On the bridge of his ship Defiance II, Jake checked his displays one last time. "We're ready, Admiral. Let's show these lizards what humans do when someone threatens our home." The Zulkran fleet stopped at the edge of the solar system. Their formation was perfect and intimidating. On the Zulkran flagship, Commander Vexthor looked at the human defenses and laughed. They had built ships, but they were crude compared to Zulkran engineering. This would be easy. "Open a channel to the humans," Vexthor ordered. "Let me talk to whoever leads them." Patricia's face appeared on his screen. Her expression was hard as stone. "I am Admiral Patricia Cole, Commander of Earth's Defense Forces. You came to our system uninvited with hostile intent. Turn back now or face the consequences." Vexthor laughed again. It was a harsh, hissing sound, bold words from primitives who just left their planet. "I am Commander Vexthor of the Zulkran hegemony. Your time to surrender is over. We offered mercy once. Now you will learn what happens to primitives who say no to the hegemony. Your world will burn and your people will serve us." "You're welcome to try," Patricia replied coldly. "But I should warn you. We've been fighting wars on this planet for 10,000 years. We're pretty good at it." The channel cut off. For a moment, space was silent. Both fleets waited, predator and prey sizing each other up. Then the Zulkran ships moved forward, their weapons charging. "All ships, weapons free," Patricia commanded. "Hit them with everything we have." The battle for Earth had begun. Alarms screamed across every military base on Earth at the same time. In the orbital command center, Admiral Patricia Cole watched her sensors light up with enemy ships. The Zulkran had arrived and they brought an army. "Count them," she ordered, keeping her voice steady even though her heart was pounding. 68 ships, Admiral," the sensor operator said. His voice shook a little. "They're bigger than the ones that attacked the Defiance. Multiple capital ships, destroyers, and what looked like carriers." Patricia felt the weight of 3 billion lives on her shoulders. Earth's 32 warships against 68 alien vessels. The odds were bad, but humans had faced worse odds before. Though never with this much at stake. "All ships, battle stations. Execute defensive formation Delta 7. Do not fire until I give the order." She switched channels. "Commodore Morrison, are your people ready?" On the bridge of his ship Defiance II, Jake Morrison checked his tactical display one last time. His ship was one of 12 positioned at the front of Earth's defenses, the first line against the Zulkran. "We're ready, Admiral. Let's show these lizards what humans do when someone threatens our home." The Zulkran fleet held position at the edge of the solar system. Their formation was perfect and scary. On the flagship subjugator, Commander Vexthor looked at the human defenses and smiled. They had built ships, but they were crude compared to Zalkran technology. This would be entertaining. Open a channel to the human commander, Vexthor ordered. Patricia's face appeared on his screen. Her expression was hard as granite. I am Admiral Patricia Cole, commander of Earth's Defense Forces. You entered our system uninvited with hostile intent. Turn back now or face the consequences. Vexthor's laugh was harsh and hissing. Bold words from a species that barely left its planet. I am Commander Vexthor of the Zalkran hegemony. Your time to surrender passed. We offered mercy once. Now you will learn what happens to primitives who defy the hegemony. Your world will burn, your people will serve, and your defiance will be remembered as foolishness. You're welcome to try, Patricia replied coldly. But I should warn you, we've been fighting wars on this planet for 10,000 years. We've gotten pretty good at it. The channel cut off. For a moment, space was silent. Both fleets held position, predator and prey looking at each other. Then the Zalkran ship surged forward, weapons powering up. All ships weapons free, Patricia commanded. Hit them with everything we have. The battle began with a fury that shocked the Zalkran. The human ships didn't run. They didn't try to negotiate. They didn't show fear. Instead, they accelerated toward the alien fleet with all weapons firing. Railgun slugs moving at incredible speeds slammed into Zalkran shields with devastating force. Nuclear missiles streaked through space, their warheads designed to create massive electromagnetic pulses. Laser arrays coordinated through quantum computers focused their fire on single targets, overwhelming shields through pure concentrated firepower. The first Zalkran destroyer exploded in a brilliant flash, then a second, then a third. Impossible, Vexthor snarled, watching his display in disbelief. They're primitives. How are they doing this? His second-in-command studied the data. Commander, they're using coordinated fire patterns. Multiple ships focusing on single targets. Their weapons are crude but effective when combined. And their tactics, they're not fighting like any species we've encountered before. On the Defiance 2, Jake smiled grimly as another Zalkran ship broke apart. All ships form up. We're going to punch through their line and hit those carriers. Without their fighters, they lose their advantage. Captain Lisa Hayes brought her ship alongside the Defiance 2. Jake, we're losing the Independence and the Fury. Their shields can't take much more. Then we make their sacrifice count, Jake replied. All power to forward shields. We're going in. The human ships drove forward like a spear aimed at the heart of the Zalkran formation. They took brutal damage, shields failing and armor buckling, but they didn't stop. Behind them was Earth, home to everyone they knew, and nothing was getting past them. The carrier Worldbreaker loomed ahead, massive and imposing. Its fighter bays were opening, releasing swarms of smaller craft that would overwhelm human defenses if given the chance. Jake made a decision he knew would haunt him forever. All ships target the Worldbreaker, arm nuclear weapons, prepare for close-range detonation. Sir, that close we'll be caught in the blast, his tactical officer protested. I know, Jake said quietly. Do it anyway. 6 human destroyers accelerated to ramming speed with nuclear arsenals armed. The Zalkran realized the danger too late. Desperate energy beams destroyed 2 human ships before they could reach their target. But 4 got through. The explosions were visible from Earth. Multiple nuclear detonations occurred simultaneously against the carrier's hull. The Worldbreaker's shields collapsed, then its armor failed. Then its reactor went critical. The blast was so massive it destroyed 3 nearby Zalkran escorts and damaged 6 more. But the cost was terrible. 4 human ships with over 200 crew members vanished in the explosion. Patricia watched from orbit as the battle raged. Her heart broke with every ship she lost. But the sacrifice was working. The Zalkran advance had stopped. They expected an easy victory against primitives who would break and run. Instead, they encountered a species that would rather die than submit, that fought with ferocity born of countless wars. Admiral, the Zalkran are falling back, her tactical officer reported, almost unable to believe it. They're regrouping. On the subjugator, Vexthor stared at his display in shock. He had lost 16 ships, including 1 precious carrier. The humans had lost twice that number, but they were still fighting, still advancing, still showing no sign of breaking. Commander, their tactics are unlike anything in our database, his second reported. They're using suicide attacks, coordinated pack tactics, and they're adapting to our weapons in real time. They learn from every exchange. Vexthor's claws scraped against his command console. He had underestimated these humans, treated them like every other primitive species. But these weren't like the others. These were predators wearing the mask of civilization, and they had just showed their teeth. "Fall back," Vexthor ordered, the words tasting bitter. "Regroup at maximum weapons range. We need to reassess." As the Zalkrin fleet withdrew, a ragged cheer went up on the surviving human ships. They had done the impossible. They made the aliens blink, but Patricia knew the celebration was too early. They won the first battle, but the war was far from over. The Zalkrin would return, and next time they would be prepared. Earth needed more time, more ships, and more allies. As the damaged human fleet limped back to lunar orbit for repairs, Patricia made a decision. Earth couldn't fight this war alone. Somewhere in the galaxy there had to be other species who suffered under the Zalkrin, other worlds that would welcome allies against their oppressors. It was time for humanity to take the fight to the enemy. In the days after the battle, Earth mourned its dead and celebrated its survival. Memorials were built for the ships that sacrificed themselves. The crews of the Independence, Fury, Valor, and Justice were honored as heroes who saved humanity. But there was no time to rest. The shipyards worked faster than ever. More volunteers signed up to crew the new ships being built. Scientists studied the wreckage of Zalkrin vessels, learning their technology and finding weaknesses. And in a secret meeting, Patricia, Jake, and General Victor Kane planned the next phase of the war. If they were going to survive, they needed to go on the offensive. They needed to find the Zalkrin's enemies and turn them into allies. "We have a location," Victor said, pulling up a star map. "Intelligence got data from a damaged Zalkrin computer. There's a system called Velen. The Zalkrin conquered it 50 years ago. If anyone knows their weaknesses, it will be the Velens." "That's deep in enemy territory," Patricia noted. "We'd have to send a ship through multiple Zalkrin systems." "Then we send our best," Victor replied. "We send someone who's already proven they can survive against impossible odds." Everyone looked at Jake. He met their eyes and nodded slowly. "When do I leave?" 2 months after the battle for Earth, the new warship Phoenix slipped out of lunar orbit on a mission that could either save humanity or doom it. Commander Kevin Turner stood on the bridge studying star charts compiled from captured Zalkrin data. "We're looking for the Velen system," Kevin said, pointing to a distant cluster of stars. He was younger than most ship commanders, barely 40, but he proved himself in the battle by coordinating fire that destroyed 3 Zalkrin destroyers. "Intelligence says the Velens were one of the first species the Zalkrin conquered. If anyone knows their weaknesses, it's them." His first officer, Nicole Pierce, studied the route with a critical eye. She was a former intelligence analyst who moved to combat operations. "That's deep in hegemony territory, sir. We'll pass through at least 4 occupied systems. If they detect us, then we fight our way through," Kevin said simply. "Earth is buying time by building more ships, but we need allies. The Zalkrin can take a punch, but they're not invincible. If we can organize a resistance, create a coalition, we might actually have a chance." The Phoenix was humanity's most advanced ship, using everything learned from the battle for Earth. Its hull had reactive armor, its shields boosted by reverse-engineered Zalkrin technology, and its weapons upgraded to deliver devastating firepower. But it was still just one ship diving into enemy territory. 3 weeks into their journey, the Phoenix encountered its first obstacle. A Zalkrin patrol vessel dropped out of hyperspace directly in their path. "Evasive maneuvers," Kevin ordered calmly. "Charge weapons. Let's make this quick." The fight lasted less than 5 minutes. The Zalkrin ship was a standard patrol vessel, designed to intimidate conquered populations and chase pirates, not face a purpose-built warship crewed by humans who learned to fight the hard way. The Phoenix's railguns punched through its shields and missiles finished the job. "No survivors," Nicole reported flatly. "But they got a distress signal off before we destroyed them." Kevin nodded grimly. "Then we need to move fast. Plot a jump to the Velen system, maximum speed." They weren't lucky. The Phoenix emerged in the Velen system to find a Zalkrin blockade fleet waiting. 12 heavy cruisers orbited the planet with weapons locked and ready. "Well," Kevin muttered, "at least we know the Velens are still here." The lead Zalkrin cruiser hailed them. Commander Vexthor appeared on screen, now sporting what looked like battle scars. He stared at the human ship with cold fury. "Commander Turner of Earth," Vexthor said, having clearly done his research. "You made a very long journey to die. Surrender now, and I promise your death will be quick." "Thanks, but I'll pass," Kevin replied. I'm here to talk to the Velans, not you. The Velans are property of the hegemony, Vexthor hissed. You will not. Kevin cut the transmission and opened fire. Railgun slugs and missiles streaked toward the nearest cruiser, while the Phoenix dove toward the planet at maximum acceleration. The Zalkran ships gave chase, weapons tearing into the human ship's shields. Sir, we can't take on 12 cruisers, Nicole shouted over alarms. We're not going to, Kevin replied, hands flying over controls. We're going to crash the party. Helm, take us into the planet's atmosphere. Navigation. Broadcast this message on all frequencies. Humanity to Velan resistance, we're here to help. If you want to fight back, now's your chance. The Phoenix plunged into Velan's atmosphere with Zalkran cruisers following, but the human ship was smaller, more agile, and its crew was desperate. They wove between mountains and dove through canyons, using the planet itself as cover while pursuing cruisers struggled to track them. Then something unexpected happened. All across Velan, hidden resistance cells that had been quietly sabotaging the occupation for decades erupted into open rebellion. Surface-to-orbit weapons carefully hidden and maintained opened fire on Zalkran ships. Factories exploded. Communication hubs went dark. The Velans, seeing that someone finally came to help, seized their moment. In a hidden bunker beneath Velan's capital city, a Velan named Torin listened to the human transmission with disbelief. His people were small, barely reaching a human's chest, with large eyes adapted for low light and delicate hands built for fine work. They had been brilliant engineers and artists before the Zalkran came. Now they were slaves forced to build weapons for their conquerors. But Torin never stopped fighting. He organized the resistance, kept hope alive, and prepared for this day. He just never imagined help would come from a species the Zalkran dismissed as primitives. Broadcast to all cells, Torin ordered his fighters. Full uprising. Today we reclaim our world, and we have allies. The Phoenix sat down in the middle of the capital, weapons providing cover fire as Velan resistance fighters emerged from hiding. Kevin watched through viewports as thousands of Velans took to the streets, armed with improvised weapons and decades of suppressed rage. Open the hangar bay, Kevin ordered. Send down every weapon we can spare. These people are fighting for their freedom. Let's give them a chance. Over the next hours, the tide of battle shifted. The Zalkran cruisers, harassed by anti-orbital fire and unable to use full firepower without destroying facilities they wanted intact, found themselves in an impossible situation. On the ground, their garrison troops were overrun by Velan fighters who knew every street and alley of their cities. Vexthor watched his control of the planet crumble and realized he had two choices. Level the entire world from orbit, destroying its value, or retreat and report this disaster. Either option would likely end his career, possibly his life. He chose to retreat, but not before sending one final message to the Phoenix. This changes nothing, human. You made an enemy of the entire hegemony. We will crush you and your new allies. This I swear. As Zalkran ships jumped to hyperspace, Kevin allowed himself a moment of relief. They did it. They freed an enslaved world and gained an ally. But Vexthor was right about one thing. This changed everything. The war was no longer just about defending Earth. It became a crusade to free every world the Zalkran conquered. Torin climbed aboard the Phoenix with a delegation of Velan leaders. He looked up at Kevin with large, grateful eyes. For 50 years we lived under the Zalkran boot. We thought we were alone, that no one would ever come. But you did. You humans came. We came because we know what it's like to face extinction, Kevin replied, and because we know that freedom is worth fighting for no matter the cost. Then we will fight together, Torin said firmly. The Velans have skills the Zalkran covet. We can build ships, design weapons, hack their systems. We will teach you everything we know, and in return we ask only one thing. Help us free the others. There are a dozen worlds like Velan, all suffering under hegemony rule. Together we can build an alliance that even the Zalkran cannot break. Kevin extended his hand and Torin took it with both of his own. In that moment, the foundation of the coalition was laid. Humanity gained its first ally in the fight for freedom. It would not be the last. As the Phoenix prepared to leave Velan, carrying Torin and his best engineers back to Earth, Kevin looked out at the planet below. Fires were burning in the cities, the aftermath of liberation. It would take time to rebuild, to heal, to create something new from the ashes of oppression. But for the first time since the Zalkran issued their threat, Kevin felt something other than grim determination. He felt hope. Word of Velen's liberation spread through the occupied territories like wildfire. The Zalkren tried to suppress the news, but they couldn't stop it. Slaves whispered the story to each other. Resistance cells that had given up hope suddenly came back to life. And on a dozen worlds, people looked at the sky and wondered if the humans would come for them too. The Zalkren hegemony, for the first time in its long history, felt something it had never experienced before. Fear. Not fear of defeat in battle, they were still militarily superior, but fear of an idea. The idea that their victims might stop being victims. The idea that primitives from a backwater world might inspire others to fight back. And ideas, as the Zalkren were about to learn, were far more dangerous than any weapon. 1 year after the liberation of Velen, the star system designated as Zalkren Prime Station 7 hung in space like a fortress. It bristled with weapons platforms and was defended by 30 warships. It was a symbol of hegemony power, a massive installation that coordinated the occupation of 6 nearby systems. It had never been attacked, never even threatened. That was about to change. Admiral Patricia Cole stood on the bridge of the newly built dreadnought Hammer of Freedom, the flagship of what the galaxy now called the Coalition Fleet. Around her ship, 42 vessels from 7 different species moved in perfect formation, preparing for the largest military operation in Coalition history. All ships report ready, Commander Nicole Pierce reported from her station. She was now Patricia's tactical coordinator. Velen stealth ships confirmed they disabled the perimeter sensors. The Karathi heavy cruisers are in position for the Alpha Strike. Human destroyers are ready for close combat support. Patricia studied the tactical display with satisfaction. Over the past year, the Coalition grew from a desperate alliance into a formidable military force. After Velen, Kevin Turner's mission continued, freeing the insectoid Karathi and the amphibious Delphians. Each species brought unique strengths. Velen technical expertise, Karathi industrial capacity, Delphian biological weapons, and human tactical ferocity. Together they fought a dozen skirmishes against Zalkren forces, learning their enemies' tactics and exploiting weaknesses. The hegemony, used to fighting lone species on their home turf, proved remarkably vulnerable to coordinated multi-species tactics. But this was different. This was taking the fight to the heart of hegemony territory, and Patricia knew the risks. If they failed here, the Coalition might not survive the counterattack. "Jake, are you in position?" Patricia asked over a private channel. Commodore Jake Morrison, now commanding the carrier Defiance III, responded immediately. "Fighter wings are ready, Admiral. Just give the word." Patricia took a deep breath. Around the galaxy, billions of beings were watching, waiting to see if the Coalition could deliver on its promise to end hegemony tyranny. She thought of Earth, of Velen, of all the worlds counting on them. "All ships, this is Admiral Cole." A year ago, the Zalkren thought they could bully humanity into submission. They learned otherwise. Since then, we've shown them that every species they conquered has the same fire, the same refusal to kneel. Today we're going to teach them one more lesson. Empires built on fear and oppression always fall. All ships execute Operation Thunderstrike. The Coalition fleet struck with devastating precision. Velen stealth ships disabled the station's shields at key points. Karathi heavy cruisers, massive ships built in the forges of their volcanic homeworld, smashed through the defensive perimeter. Human destroyers, fast and deadly, swarmed the Zalkren defenders like wolves bringing down prey. And from the Defiance III, Jake's fighter wings poured forth, human pilots flying alongside Velen engineers in 2-seater craft. Karathi drone swarms controlled by biological neural networks. Delphian chemical bombers that dissolved Zalkren armor with frightening efficiency. The Zalkren fleet fought back desperately, but they were unprepared for the coordination. The tactics, the sheer variety of threats coming at them from all directions. One by one, their ships fell. On the station itself, Commander Vexathor watched his command crumble around him. Over the past year, he became obsessed with the humans and their Coalition, studying their tactics, trying to understand how primitives created such an effective fighting force. He requested reinforcements and warned Hegemony High Command that these species were different, more dangerous. They ignored him, and now he was paying the price. "Commander, the station's main reactor is destabilizing," his second reported, voice tight with fear. "We need to evacuate." "No," Vexthor said quietly, making a decision. "Open a channel to the Coalition flagship. Patricia's face appeared on his screen. Her expression was hard but not cruel. Commander Vexthor, I'm told you're the one who started this by threatening Captain Morrison. How's that working out for you? It's over, Vexthor said simply. My station is lost. My fleet is destroyed. But before I die, I want you to know something, human. I studied your species. I know your history. You fought each other for 10,000 years, nearly destroyed yourselves a dozen times. You created weapons that could end all life on your world. You are violent, aggressive, and terrifyingly efficient at warfare. Is there a point to this? Patricia asked coldly. The point is that the hegemony awakened something that should have been left sleeping, Vexthor continued. We thought we were the apex predators of the galaxy, but you humans, you're something worse. You're survivors. You adapt, you persist, you never stop fighting, and now you taught other species to fight like you do. We created our own destroyer. Patricia's expression softened slightly. It didn't have to be this way. If you had come in peace, if you had offered friendship instead of threats, none of this would have happened. We don't want to be warriors, Commander. We want to explore, to learn, to build. But when someone threatens our freedom, our homes, our right to exist, we become something else. Not because we're violent by nature, but because we value freedom more than life itself. Then I pity the hegemony, Vexthor said, because they're about to learn that lesson the hard way. The transmission cut off as the station's reactor went critical. Patricia ordered the Coalition fleet to retreat to safe distance, and they watched as Zalkrin Prime Station 7 exploded in a flash of light visible from 3 systems away. The battle was over. The Coalition won its greatest victory, but Patricia knew this was just the beginning. Back on Earth, President Daniel Cross addressed a joint session of the Coalition Council, now including representatives from 7 species. His hair was whiter than a year ago, the stress of leading humanity through its greatest crisis visible in every line on his face. Members of the Council, Daniel began, today we proved that the Zalkrin hegemony is not invincible. We've shown that species working together, fighting for freedom rather than conquest, can defeat even the most powerful empire, but we cannot become what we're fighting against. We must remember that our goal is not to conquer the Zalkrin, but to free those they've enslaved and ensure this never happens again. Torin of Velen stood to speak, his small frame somehow projecting immense dignity. President Cross speaks wisdom. We have won battles, but the war continues. The hegemony still controls dozens of systems, enslaves hundreds of billions. But now they know fear. Now they understand that their victims have become victors. Every species they conquered is watching us, hoping we'll come for them too. We cannot let them down. Over the next months, the Coalition liberated world after world. Each victory brought new allies, new ships, new hope. The Zalkrin tried to mount counterattacks, but their forces were stretched thin. Occupied worlds rose in rebellion. Subject species refused to build weapons for their masters. The hegemony, built on intimidation and fear, crumbled when its victims stopped being afraid. In the Zalkrin capital, the Grand Council convened an emergency session. The loss of Station 7 sent shockwaves through their civilization. For the first time in their history, the hegemony was losing a war. The Supreme Commander addressed the assembly with cold fury. We have underestimated the humans and their coalition. We treated them as we treat all primitives, expecting quick submission. Instead, we created something that threatens everything we built. Then we destroy them, one counselor hissed. Gather our full fleet, crush their homeworlds, make examples that will be remembered for 10,000 years. And what will that cost us? Another challenged. Half our fleet? Our entire military might. We have other enemies, other borders to defend. If we commit everything to destroying the Coalition, what happens to our other territories? The debate raged for hours, but eventually a shocking conclusion emerged. The hegemony, for the first time in its history, would need to negotiate. Not surrender, they told themselves, just a strategic withdrawal. They would offer the Coalition their conquered territories, recognize their sovereignty, even pay reparations. In return, the Coalition would agree not to attack hegemony core worlds. When the hegemony's offer arrived at Coalition headquarters, Daniel Cross read it with mixed feelings. They won. Against all odds, humanity and its allies defeated an interstellar empire. But the cost had been enormous. Thousands dead, entire worlds scarred by battle, a year of constant fear and struggle. The Coalition Council voted to accept the hegemony's terms. The war was over. 5 years later, Captain Amy Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the survey vessel New Horizons. The coalition officially dissolved 2 years earlier, each species returning to independence while maintaining mutual defense treaties. Amy returned to her first love, exploration. "Captain, we're picking up interesting readings from the third planet in this system," her science officer reported. "It appears to be inhabited. Pre-industrial civilization, maybe early information age." Amy smiled. "Standard first contact protocols. We observe, we don't interfere, and if they're ready to join the galactic community, we offer friendship, not ultimatums." As the New Horizons moved into orbit, Amy thought about how much changed. The galaxy was different now. The hegemony collapsed shortly,